What up, y'all? This is Tracy from Nerd Squish, and today we're going to be talking about the last voyage of the Demeter. The searchlight followed her, and a shudder ran through all who saw her, for lashed to the helm was a corpse, with drooping head, which swung horribly to and fro at each motion of the ship. No other form could be seen on deck at all. A great awe came on all as they realized that the ship, as if by a miracle, had found the harbor, unsteered save by the hand of a dead man. That was a snippet of Chapter 7 of Bram Stoker's Dracula. This small part of the classic vampire story is where they got the inspiration to make the last voyage of the Demeter. The chapter explores a cutting from the Daily Graph that Mina Murray pasted in her journal. It tells the story of the crew of the Demeter as they set sail from Carpathia to England, and one by one they are mysteriously killed by an evil creature on board. That creature being Dracula. Now, this was a movie the minute I heard about it, I was stoked. Stoked for Stoker. Get it? Anyway. Universal Monster fan, so you know when I saw this, I was pumped. So now that I've seen the movie, the question is, does it live up to the hype of a Universal Monster movie? Because as y'all know, a lot of the recent Universal Monster movies have fell a little flat. So needless to say, I try not to get too excited about them, but let's dive into this one and see if it's worth the hype. But before we get into those details, if you're new here, this is Nerd Squish, where we take everything spooky and we take everything nerdy and we squish it all together. So if you like horror movies, Halloween, and pop culture, definitely hit that subscribe button so you can see more videos from us in the future. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, this is your spoiler warning, okay? Like, I know a lot of people do spoiler-free movie reviews, but to me, I like to get into the details. I like to dive into these things. So, spoiler alert. Although, being that this is based off of a chapter of a book that's pretty famous, that most people that are readers have read, most people that know vampire stories know this story, you know how it ends, so can I even really put a spoiler alert on a story that we already know? I don't know. Take it as you will. Now, the movie had to do a lot of fluffing because the particular chapter that it's based on is, in this copy of the book that I have, is only 14 pages. So how do you take 14 pages and turn them into basically a 2-hour-long movie? The basic premise is the same, but they added a lot of new characters and moments that weren't featured in the book. The movie focuses on Clemens, who's a kind-hearted doctor that joins the crew of the Demeter after saving the grandson of the captain. Now, these three characters, Clemens, Captain Elliot, and Toby, are like the stars of the movie to me. Not only are they great actors on their own, but I really felt like the chemistry between the three really worked well for this movie. And I just have to give credit to Woody Norman, the actor that plays the young grandson of Captain Elliot, because y'all know, kid actors, they can be questionable at times, but this kid was good. He was a good actor. He was believable in these intense situations, so I have to give props where props are due. That being said, again, all of these actors, especially these main three, I was feeling it. Specifically, Corey Hawkins, who plays Clemens. I really haven't seen him in many other things, but I definitely hope to see more from this actor. So the movie really ramps up when Clemens discovers a stowaway in the cargo. Soon after this young woman is discovered, strange things start to happen on the ship. All the livestock is slaughtered, and the dog, because I don't know, people just keep putting dogs dying in movies. Crime against humanity. And one by one, the crew begins to disappear, driving the remaining crew into paranoia. Now to get to our main man, Dracula. Much like the shark in Jaws, he's a looming presence and is rarely seen. While his creature design is cool, it's mostly seen by the way of CGI, which I despise, but that's the way most creatures are done these days. His design is very reminiscent of a mixture of Nosferatu and Salem's Lot. And I really loved watching the evolution of his look throughout the film. He starts off very, small, meek, kind of Gollum-like. But as he feeds, he grows larger and becomes this just scary bat from hell. And I loved that. In this movie, we're kind of seeing Dracula like we've never seen him before. Less of a suave, calculated killer and more of a rabid, wild animal. Don't get me wrong, I love a suave vampire. I love Bela Lugosi, I love that whole shtick. But in these movies, we often do see that creature form of Dracula, but it's very brief in the beginning of the movie and they don't elaborate into it. So it was really fun to dive in and have just 2 hours showing this unseen version of Dracula. And this movie was actually scary. We are not seeing a sexy, sparkling vampire. We are taking this iconic vampire back to his horror roots. In the beginning of the movie, we only see Dracula as a flash of something in the dark through the crew members' eyes. Did they really see something, or is the dark just playing tricks on them? The camera slowly pans around behind the crew member, and you're like, oh, we are about to see something terrifying. And then, nope. There's nothing there. And I'm on the edge of my seat. I am sweating. I assumed this movie wouldn't be scary because most modern Universal monster movies try to appeal to the masses. But this movie wasn't afraid to get bloody. It wasn't a 24/7 over-the-top gore fest, but when it needed to show the cruelty of an ancient evil like Dracula, it did what it needed to do, and I loved that. Now, this may seem silly to say, considering that this is, again, based off of a chapter of a book where that literally every person on this boat dies. But, still, you're in this movie, you're getting into these characters, and it really wasn't afraid to kill off characters that you thought were safe. Another factor that really amps up the scares is the claustrophobic setting of the Demeter. You're on a boat in the middle of the sea with nowhere to escape. It's not like a haunted house where you can just open the front door and run out because, if you do that, you're dropping into the sea. And, at that point, a shark's probably gonna get you. So, Dracula, shark, pick your poison. The overall aesthetic of the movie is wonderful, and it's dark in all the right ways. It's bringing those coastal gothic vibes that are perfect for a vampire story set at sea. The never-ending rain and gray mist make it a perfect movie for that late summer horror vibes as you get ready for spooky season. Then again, Andre Overdahl directed this movie, and this dude knows how to create a spooky atmosphere. He also directed one of my favorite horror movies of all time, The Autopsy of Jane Doe. He knows the importance of focusing on a visual style and letting that atmosphere become a character itself. Speaking of aesthetics and setting the mood, we gotta talk about the fact that Bear McCreary did the score for this movie. Now, if you're not familiar with McCreary, he has composed music for all kinds of different things that you've probably watched, much like Outlander and that epic theme song for The Walking Dead. So this guy knows how to set that hopelessness and that terror in a story. Now, like I said before, the chapter of the book is only 14 pages, so they obviously had to flourish a lot of this story and just come up with a lot of original things. But on the flip side, there are a lot of very specific moments that are nods to the original subject matter. It was no wonder that the Coast Guard was surprised, or even awed, for not often can such a sight have been seen. The man was simply fastened by his hands, tied one over the other, to a spoke of the wheel. Between the inner hand and the wood was a crucifix, the set of beads on which it was fastened being around both wrists and wheel, and all kept fast by the binding cords. And we see this moment in the movie pretty spot on. In the book, there are no survivors of the crew, and once the Demeter crashes to the shore, Dracula transforms into a giant dog and runs off. Now, the movie handles this quite differently. After battling Dracula and jumping ship, Clemens survives by floating on this piece of debris back to the shore. And afterwards, we see him sitting in a tavern where he sees none other than Dracula. And this is where he vows to hunt down the evil creature and kill him. So was the ending slightly cheesy? Yes. It takes you out of the story and kind of reminds you that you're watching a movie. It really didn't match the mood of the rest of the film, but at the same time, it gave me the vibes of these classic Universal monster remakes that we saw in the 2000s. I can't exactly explain it, but I'm kinda living for the cheese. And it definitely sets up the possibility of a sequel. Clemens is a doctor that makes it his life's mission to rid the world of an evil monster. Does that sound familiar? You know who else is a doctor? Van Helsing. And then not only that, but we see not once, but twice the Wolfman's cane. So I'm just saying, like, Clemens could become Van Helsing. We've seen Wolfman's cane, and then we know the Ryan Gosling Wolfman movie is in pre-production, so make a girl's dreams come true. I'm trying to see this. I'm trying to see the dark universe actually be a thing. I know everybody else has given up hope, but here I am still clinging on, hoping for the impossible. I highly doubt that we will see a sequel to this movie. Although I would love to see it because I loved this movie and would love to see more of this world. Ultimately, I really don't think the movie's gonna make enough money for them to want to make a sequel. Not only is this movie fighting Barbie and Oppenheimer in the theater, but it's kind of niche. For a Universal Monster fan and a book lover, this is my jam. However, I don't really think this is the general audience's thing. But I do like the fact that Universal was like, y'all still want that dark universe? To which I will always answer, yes. Yes, we do. I need it! And this movie right here would be an excellent entry into the dark universe. As a Universal Monster fan, this is exactly what I've been wanting to see in a Universal Monster movie. It's not trying to be some big, over-the-top action movie with big-name stars. It's not trying to modernize the monsters, deliver a message, or be woke. It took a classic monster in a period piece and delivered suspense and gore. This is exactly what we want in a Universal Monster movie. To summarize all my thoughts on this movie, we are seeing Dracula in a new and refreshing way, while still keeping his roots to the original subject matter that Bram Stoker wrote in 1897. I can't say enough good things about this movie. Literally my only complaint is, the CGI can get a little over the top at times. But it wasn't too distracting because there are a lot of practical sets, there are a lot of practical makeup. I just, at the end of the day, would have enjoyed seeing more of a practical Dracula. So, I'm always gonna complain about that. I highly, highly recommend you go see this movie, specifically people that are Universal Monster fans and classic literature lovers. You will not be disappointed. So let me know in the comments down below, have you seen The Last Voyage of the Demeter, and what are your thoughts? Do you want a sequel? Do you want to see Clemens become Dr. Van Helsing? Because that's where I'm at, honestly. I hope y'all enjoyed this movie review. If you did, give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so when new videos hit the channel, you'll be notified. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you nerds later!